Okay, so today we have the classical period, um, our second unit in our curriculum. The classical period periodization that we'll use, the date range. We said the foundations period ended in 500 BCE. So we pick up telling the story in 500 BCE, and most historians will agree that the classical period lasts, roughly speaking, about 1,000 years. So we say 500 BCE all the way to 500 CE. And really kind of the big picture, the things that we need to consider as we get into the classical period is understanding that a foundation has already been laid. We saw early societies emerge in all the different river valleys all across the globe. And what we're going to see now is as those civilizations crumbled, there was still something left over. And as society progresses and the classical period takes shape, what we see historically is people kind of take those early foundations, look to what really worked and what was solid and made societies thrive, but add kind of the modern day ideas, the modern day technology to what had already existed to create a pretty sophisticated world. In our textbook, we'll cover chapters 7 all the way through chapter 12, excuse me. That will cover the classical civilizations. We'll start with a discussion of Persia here in chapter 7. So really kind of what came after the early Mesopotamian civilizations. We'll skip chapter 8 and we'll go to chapter 9. In chapter 9, we'll talk a little bit more about India, the Mauryan dynasty, the Gupta dynasty that took place in South Asia, obviously following those civilizations of the Indus River Valley, and then obviously what came about of the Vedic Age with the arrival of the Aryans. We'll then go back to chapter 8, and in chapter 8 we'll go ahead and we'll talk about East Asia, we'll talk about China, be introduced to the lovely Qin Shi Huangdi, one of the greatest individuals in all of world history. That was a joke. A scary dude, but nonetheless the founder of the Qin dynasty, and then we will also see the Han dynasty take place here in classical times in China. Chapter 10 and 11, we go back to Europe. Chapter 10, we'll talk about the Greek city-states and their influence, obviously, on the entire world, but mostly Eurasia at this time in history, of course. And then in chapter 11, we're introduced to our last classical society, and that, of course, is going to be Rome. And we'll discuss the Roman Empire and its significance to the classical period. And then finally, in chapter 12, chapter 12 is entitled Cross-Cultural Interactions. And in chapter 12, it kind of just brings all the societies together. It talks about how Rome was connected to Han China, and subsequently that's going to, encompass what was left over of the Greek peninsula, and also the various Persian empires, and also what was taking place in India. The classical period, 500 BCE to 500 CE. If you have not looked at your texts yet, right before chapter 7, there is an introductory reading. I'd encourage you to take a look at it. Kind of will set the stage for the next few chapters, 157 and 158. I take that back, 156 and 157. All right.